On Friday, as Mr. Trump was being briefed, I sat down with two Republican senators who have been critical of President-elect Trump on all things Russia, John McCain and Lindsey Graham. Just one day after McCain held the first congressional hearing on Russian interference in 2017. And I began by asking the both of them about Mr. Trump's claim Friday morning that what we're seeing is nothing more than a political witch hunt.
I believe our intelligence leaders, General Clapper and Admiral Rogers, who testified before the Armed Services Committee, are credible people and well respected. General Clapper, I think, had 53 years of experience in the intelligence business. And yes, intelligence authorities have made mistakes in the past and been wrong in the past, but what they're saying is there's a long history of Russian attempts to affect the outcome of our election.
You know, here's the deal for me. I think he's worried that inquiring into what Russia did in the election is going to undermine his credibility and his legitimacy. Quite frankly, I haven't heard any Democrat at all of prominence say that we doubt that Donald Trump won. Putin's not the reason that Clinton lost and Trump won. I don't think anybody's saying that. So, Mr. President-elect, that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is find out what the Russians did in our elections and make sure that other people, including the Russians, won't do it next time. No doubt in my mind that Russians interfered, that John Podesta's emails were hacked by the Russians, not some 14-year-old kid or 300-pound guy, and that the DNC was compromised by the Russians. And it seems pretty clear to me that WikiLeaks got it from the Russians. It didn't affect the outcome, but they tried to interfere in our election. So he's going to be the defender of the free world here pretty soon. In a couple of weeks, Donald Trump will be the defender of the free world and democracy. You should let everybody know in America, Republicans and Democrats, that you're going to make Russia pay a price for trying to interfere. Even though it didn't affect the outcome, they tried to interfere and they need to pay a price, and I don't care what their motives were.
Why do you think he continues to question intelligence on this?
I think he's worried about it undermining his legitimacy.
You think it's totally about, it's personal?
I really, because he said it's time to move on. Remember when he was asked about, I think maybe on New Year's Eve, let's just get on with our lives. Here's my retort to that. Our lives are built around the idea that we're free people, that we go to the ballot box, that we have political contests outside of foreign interference. You can't go on with your life as a democracy when a foreign entity is trying to compromise the election process. So, Mr. President-elect, it is very important that you show leadership here. Let me say this. If after having been briefed by our intelligence leaders, Donald Trump is still unsure as to what the Russians did, that would be incredibly unnerving to me because the evidence is overwhelming. All I'm asking him is to acknowledge that Russia interfered and push back. And it could be Iran next time. It could be China. It was Democrats today. It could be Republicans in the next election.
I want to get, the Washington Post has a part of this intelligence assessment that says that one of the reasons they know this is they intercepted some communications with Russian officials that were essentially celebrating the Trump victory. What does that tell you?
I think you can only draw the conclusion, if they were celebrating, that they obviously wanted the outcome to be what it was. And then the question is what did they do to try to achieve that outcome? And it's pretty obvious that they were heavily engaged, and we need to come to grips with it and get to the bottom of it and overall come up with a strategy in this new form of warfare that can basically harm our economy, harm our elections, harm national security.
Where should this investigation go from here? You guys are focused on the larger issue of cybersecurity, frankly, protecting democracies around the world. But what about, should there be an investigation about whether any of the campaigns had any interactions with Moscow, with any...
I would like to see a select committee. Apparently that is not in agreement by our leadership. So we will move forward with the Armed Services Committee, and I'm sure Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee will as well. But it is possible, if enough information comes out, that that decision could be reversed. I still think it's the best way to attack the issue.
Are there still active investigations going on to try to figure out if there was coordination between campaigns?
You asked me, what
Moscow?
should we do? We should get to the bottom of all things Russia when it came to the 2016
Period.
election. Period.
Wherever it leads.
Yeah, wherever it leads, in whatever form.
Is that
because-
currently happening now in other investigative agencies? FBI, a joint task force, anything like that? Is that currently happening?
I
and just
believe-
we don't know about it?
I believe that it's happening, but you need to talk to them because I don't want to speak for them. Here's what I think we should do as a nation. We should all, Republicans, Democrats, condemn Russia for what they did. To my Republican friends who are gleeful, you're making a huge mistake. When WikiLeaks released information during the Bush years about the Iraq War that was embarrassing to the administration, that put our troops at risk, most Democrats condemned it, some celebrated it. Most Republicans are condemning what Russia did, and to those who are gleeful about it, you're a political hack. You're not a Republican, you're not a patriot. If this is not about us, then I'll never know what will be about us. Because when one party is compromised, all of us are compromised, and here's what I'm going to do with Senator McCain. We're going to introduce sanctions that are bipartisan, that go beyond the sanctions we have today against Russia, that will hit them in the financial sector and the energy sector where they're the weakest, and we're going to give President Trump an opportunity to make Russia pay a price for interfering in our elections so it will deter others in the future. I hope he will take advantage of it.
Let me play devil's advocate here. What about what some Trump supporters might say, Senator McCain, hey, we spy on Russia, Russia spies on us. We've done some democracy, we've supported democracy movements in Russia, actively so. Isn't that a form of getting involved in their politics? How is this not the same thing?
It isn't just elections that they are hacking into. It is across the board, including military secrets that we have, including the ability to shut down satellites, including the ability to shut down power plants. I mean, they can do grave danger to the United States of America. We never tried to do anything like that.
You guys just returned from a trip to Eastern Europe, spending some time in the Baltic countries. What would you say to Donald Trump? He seems to have an affinity for Putin. He seems to want to have a reset with him. After your visit with Eastern Europe, do you think a reset with Putin is something that's worth doing?
I wish that he could have gone with me to Ukraine as we did to Mariupol and met with the brave Ukrainians that are serving. They have slaughtered Ukrainians. They have dismembered a country, and I don't think they're through. And they've done so in violation of all international norms of behavior, and they're putting strains on the post-World War II New World Order, the likes of which we've never seen.
Here's what we told them. Our voices are going to be lent to their cause in two ways. I want a 1-2 punch against Russia. I want more sanctions to hit him harder to deter what he did in our election and what he's doing throughout the world, Putin. Secondly, I want to help the Baltic states, Ukraine and Georgia more. We want more trainers on the ground, 365 days a year, a permanent U.S. military training presence in the Baltics, Ukraine, and Georgia.
Would you be more comfortable today if Hillary Clinton were preparing to be president as far as national security is concerned, Senator McCain?
No, I don't think much about that because of the result of the election, but I thought some of the things that were revealed in the WikiLeaks were very disturbing as well, and the server and the statements about Benghazi. So, no, I'm not sure it would be better.
And where are you in this?
Well, I want President Trump to be a good president. I like the fact that he wants to get a better deal with the Iranians. I like the fact that he wants to cut taxes and secure our border. There's a lot of things I agree with Donald Trump on. I want to help him where I can, and I feel an obligation to say no where I must. Right now, the biggest problem I have with what I see coming out of the President-elect's team is Russia. I'm hoping that after he gets the briefing from the finest among us, that there is zero doubt the Russians did this. Nobody's saying that you didn't win the election, Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump. That's not the issue. I hope you will embrace the intelligence. You will join with Republicans and Democrats to push back against Russia to make sure this stops and doesn't happen again. If after the briefing he is still unsure, that will shake me to my core about his judgment.
I'm going to wrap up with a question that has nothing to do with this. President Obama is going to be giving his farewell address. Most positive part of his legacy, most negative part of his legacy. I'll start with you, Senator McCain.
I would say the most positive part of his legacy is that the very fact that the first African American is President of the United States is a signal that in America, anybody can rise to the highest level. And I think that that's a very important landmark and is historic. I would argue that his worst is his handling of national security, particularly in the Middle East, and that the red line over Syrian use of chemical weapons, that sent, when he went back on that, it sent a message that reverberated throughout the world.
Where are you? Positive, negative?
He and the First Lady need to be complimented for representing our nation well as a first family. It's not, like Senator McCain says, it's historic. He's the first African-American president. But it just wasn't that. I think the family represented us in a fashion we can all be proud of. As to policy, I think he's going to be remembered for taking America from a position of strength to a position of weakness. That on his watch, he was a very poor adversary for evil and even worse defender of
That's
democracy.
rough.
It's true and it's sad. It's not what I want to say, but tell me how you can come to any other conclusion. All I can say is his foreign policy has been a miserable failure. He's been weak to his core when it comes to representing American values. And that is what I believe, and I hope Donald Trump will make it better. We've had 8 years of weak. I don't want 4 more years of it. I hope he'll turn this around, and when it comes to Russia, he's on the wrong path.
When we